Race 2 of the weekend here at Paul Ricard for the GT2 European Series, powered by Pirelli, getting underway shortly on a rather damp and greasy circuit. It has been a very odd weekend weather-wise here in the south of France, and rain towards the end of earlier races has left the circuit once again wet, and the drizzle has continued. So anybody that came here only with their shorts and t-shirt expecting lovely sunny weather, sorely disappointed. But it gives us a rather different feel, that's for sure, for our second 1 hour race of the weekend. David Addison and Joe Osborne trackside. So too, Joe, umbrellas.
Yeah, it's been a tough one for the teams, hasn't it? We've had drizzle, but this is the first time the cars will go on track with wet tyres. So this will be a bit of an unknown. It's a new slick, but also a new wet this year from Pirelli. So a lot of unknowns to those drivers venturing out onto a wet circuit for the first time. And
out come the cars then. They've done all the dry running thus far. And actually, the rain that has carried on for the last, couple of hours, best part of, from the Lamborghini Super Trofeo race, it drizzled on and off, but largely on. And then it's drizzled on and off, largely on through lunch break. Now, that is properly a wet track. They've had no wet running, so I'm interested to see whether this ends up being an extra formation lap or even a safety car start, because there is discernible spray as you look there at Stefano Rossina, the race 1 winner, heading round to the grid and to pole position.
Yeah, working those tyres, most probably a brand new wet, so the releasing agent, a quite slippy, oily substance on top of a tyre when it's new. Trying to scrub that off is obviously quite hard when it's wet because you're not getting much friction, so you have to really work, which Rossina's doing very efficiently there down the Mistral straight. But yeah, there's even bits of standing water, wasn't there, as they leave the pit lane, a bit there in the middle of the brake zone, another bit as they turn in for turns 8 and then into 9. This is tricky, and these laps are so important for the drivers to see where the conditions are at, where the grip's at, and try and get ahead of the game and think where they're going to want to be for the first few laps of the race.
Just the number 7 Maserati, which was a winning car combination last year, Roberto Pampanini and Mauro Calamia. And their Maserati had a drive-through in the earlier race for being out of position at the start, for being in the middle of the road rather than being in the defined grid formation. So they never really recovered from that. The first race ended up being won by Stefano Rossina and Bronitt Formanek from pole and with fastest lap. And if that makes it sound easy, it really wasn't. A lot went on with the KTMs being particularly rapid. Now, I wonder whether in the wet conditions that's going to play into their hands with not quite so much grunt, not quite so much wheel spin.
Yeah, the only thing that goes against the KTM, it's similar to the McLaren, is that the carbon fibre chassis so stiff, and in the wet you haven't got the energy to really use that stiffness in a positive way. So again, it would depend what the teams have done strategy-wise here. Did they know it was going to be wet? Have they got a full wet setup on the car? Have they got a hybrid that if it does dry out, they're happy, or are they on a full dry setup? So that will be hard, and there's an infinite amount of changes you can do on the car. Quick, easy ones, for example, taking the roll bars off, the big bars that run from left to right, front and rear on these cars, to stop the car rolling around too much. In the wet, you can actually disconnect these to allow that body roll and the weight transfer to happen easier. That's a 2-minute job, front and rear. Bigger jobs would be changing springs, changing the geometry of that suspension, ride heights, wings, all of that. Like I said, there's so many options for these teams to choose what they're going to do. The big shame for me is losing that Maserati from LP Racing of Anik Patel and Eddie Cheever, who would have been starting this race on pole position, obviously. So, yeah, unfortunately, Anik Patel, damage sustained in race 1, actually caught up with him over the lunch break, and the damage is not going to be repaired before this race, essentially. So they've had to withdraw the car,
which is a big shame, and also a time taken away from Thomas Minneberger, Victor Mirage. I think Victor Mirage has stood down from this race, so Thomas Minneberger going solo, as I understand it, therefore will be starting from the back of the grid. It's shown as the start driver being Victor Mirage on the original grid sheet, but then Thomas Minneberger's name is there instead, and I suspect he's going solo, and as a result of that starts at the back of the grid. Change of driver entry, effectively. So on a wet road, up to the grid, there comes the KTM of Simon Birch. And that car got increasingly rapid towards the end of race 1, but in these conditions, it might be the car to have. 5-minute board shown. We've not had anything up yet about either an extra green flag lap or a safety car start, so it looks as though they're going to be allowed into battle in what you might call a natural start, which is all to the good.
Yeah, the only thing there is sort of the safety car creeping forward into a central position, whereas normally that would be the lead car if it wasn't going to be a safety car start. So I wonder if race control are just getting their priorities in order and actually getting that safety car in a position where it will lead this field away. It might just be general procedure. I just caught it in the corner of my eye. So the NM Racing Mercedes there, very strong, wasn't it? Montserrat really caught up to Birch quickly, and then we thought the move was going to happen, and it did, but it didn't stick.
No, yeah.
Birch got back past, and then that was kind of status quo. That was a bit of an oddity there, and that was in dry conditions, so we've got a completely different set of rules that are going to approach us for this 1 hour race.
Look at the amount of water coming off the underside of number 1, Philippe Pret's car. That's going to start towards the back of the grid after the gearbox let go. Had a gearbox problem in the first qualifying session, never got out for Q2. Now, the good news here is it makes the race interesting to watch him up from the back. He was the winner of AM in the first race, and therefore carries an extra amount of time in the pits, and then you add extra on again because he's a soloist. So his pit stop is going to be 14 seconds longer than anybody else's.
Something like 162 seconds?
It'll be about that, yes.
Quick math.
Whereas others do 10 or 7 or 5, but he gets 14.
Yeah, so it's a long time sat in the pits. They were losing a lap and 10 seconds essentially this morning. So he's going to be losing nearly a lap and a half there. So it's going to be difficult for him to overcome that. But these are the conditions you want when you need a bit of extra help.
Let's go to the grid and catch up with Alex Legui, with Matta Homolo and Laura Kreimer.
I just thought I would have a catch-up with Laura Kreimer as Matta Homolo is in the car. Il pleut. That makes it a little bit more exciting, doesn't it? Especially when you don't know what these tyres are going to be like.
Yes, no, it's a surprise package, but I think it's going to be an epic race, surely exciting, surely to stay on the grid for the first few laps and survive and then have fun and hopefully get this podium.
You were pushing really hard earlier, and I know that Matta is very good in the rain. So what do you reckon you can do from back here?
I think everything is possible, to be honest. I think we have a great car, we have a great team. Mathieu is a great driver, and I'm sure we can lock it in now.
Good. Laura, have a great race.
Thank you. See ya.
Laura Kreimer then will do the second stint. You start the race for which you qualified. There towards the back of the grid is Jordan Boisson, starting this time in the Maserati from TFT Racing that he shares with Patrick Charlet. And the other Maserati of note, that of Roberto Pampanini, Mauro Calamia, starting on the second row. That could be a potential winner of this race. The other shame about Anik Patel's non-start is that it also takes Eddie Cheever off the grid. Very quick driver in Ferraris and briefly in Mercedes, but also NASCAR, Euro, Whelen Series, you name it. He's very versatile, but never got a chance to show what he was capable of. That car out at the first corner of race 1 with quite a bit of damage. There is Philippe Pret then, lined up alongside Oliver Freimuth, another of the AM cars.
Such a pretty car, that Maserati, isn't it? The downforce on the front, the size of the splitter to help cut through the air there as we look into the cockpit of that Maserati MC20. You can see a lot of the buttons on the steering wheel, nicely colour-coded, good for the driver, so he knows he's just looking for a green button to start the car or a yellow button for full course yellow. 1 minute board, so engines will fire up and the remaining mechanics and officials will vacate the grid.
So everybody good to go. The lead car ready to take them around as it would be for a conventional rolling start. So it's refreshing in a way that the drivers are going to be challenged with coping in the rain. So often these days it's a safety car start or an extra formation lap or 2 or 3 to get them used to the conditions. But here they are sort of being sent off a little bit into the unknown, but that will show us who the good drivers are.
Yeah, definitely. It's a sport, isn't it? It looks like one of the cars maybe hasn't fired up because the mechanic running back is that to the KTM. I think we were talking to the teammate Kremhammer, is maybe just the canopy wasn't secured. Obviously quite a quirky one there. They should get away with without a penalty there, sorry, because you can't work on the car under 3 minutes, but that's not working on the car, in my opinion.
It's a safety thing as well, isn't it?
Exactly, so that should be fine. But yeah, I think as a driver, I'd always say you drive to the conditions, and if the conditions are safe enough to drive, then it's good enough to race. And refreshing to see, and the better talent shines through, and that's what sport's all about.
So green flag shown at the back, green lights go on, and the rolling lap underway then as the lead car accelerates off the line. Stefan Rossina in the Lamborghini then on pole position, the outside of the road as you look, with alongside Simon Birch in the KTM. Man to watch, I suspect, as we look at the grid, he's going to be starting third. Stefan Rossina, Simon Birch, the front row. A man to watch, certainly, from third on the grid, Neil Montserrat, and then Mauro Calamia lining up alongside, winner in the Maserati at Barcelona last year. Then it is going to be Matto Homola starting with Petra Lisha alongside. Next up is Pascal Gibon alongside Jordan Boisson, and Oliver Freimuth has Philippe Pret for company with Thomas Miniberger, as I suspect going solo now, starting at the back of the grid, moved to the rear of the grid. So Pro-Am and Am, two class battles, but now, of course, with different drivers starting and very different conditions and the pit stop compensation times, there's quite a lot that's different in this race, even if it's the same entry.
Yeah, and just trying to look at the cars dynamically as they come round, the Maserati and Mercedes there, just that bit heavier, so they transfer their weight easier, and I wonder if that is going to be a positive in these conditions versus that very light, nimble KTM. New wet tyre, like I said, so there's a lot at play here, and very excited because there's a lot of unknowns that are going to start to unfold in front of our eyes once they start this race.
Absolutely right. And the other slight unknown is A, how quickly the road might dry, and whether it's the consistent wetness all the way around. Are some parts wetter than others? Because it did look as though, and you can see the spray on the Mistral, that's wetter than we have it on the start area.
Yeah, for sure, and it's going to be hard for cars to see as well. Remember the advantage Racine is going to have if he leads after turn 1 and 2. He's got the only clear vision of this circuit, and that will be a huge advantage. So the impetus to lead this race is even higher than in a normal dry scenario, I think, in that instance.
So out of the chicane come the cars. The chicane on the Mistral straight just put in there for safety reasons, really. Otherwise, some of these less experienced drivers will be arriving very rapidly at the end of the Mistral into Scene, which is this corner here, that uphill climb, and then a very, very fast right. Now, in the earlier Lamborghini race, which was wet, a lot of people were attacking the corner, running wide as you would normally, putting two wheels on the curb on the outside, and then it would spin you across the road. So they're going to have to be careful not to be doing that. Those wet painted curbs, there you can see it on the outside. That is your worst enemy in these conditions.
Yes, it's like ice. It's such a difference in grip delta going from tarmac onto the painted white lines one step, and then the serrated wet painted curb is another. And tracks these days have an FIA graded paint they have to use, which has got effectively a bit of grit in it to offer more grip, but it's still substantially less than the black tarmac area, which you should be staying on in anyway.
So at the end of this lap, they'll get themselves into that 2x2 formation ready to go. Stefan Rossina, a very experienced driver, from being a double Skoda Octavia Cup champion all the way up to Porsche Super Cup to FIA GT1 World Championship. He then retired from racing for a while, went off to build up his business. And 89, which is Matto Homola, noted for working on the car after the 1 minute board. Well, like you said, it wasn't so much working, it was actually closing the bodywork down so it didn't flap open in the race. The safety car comes for another lap up towards the line. Now, an extra formation lap by the look of it. I wonder if, like we had in the Lamborghini race, whether the clock will now start for the start of the second lap. The lights are still on. And yes, we now go green in terms of formation lap 2. The race is notionally on. So this counts within the time, although they're not allowed to overtake. They are still in grid formation. So this is what we had for the Lamborghini Super Trofeo race earlier on. An extra formation lap just to give the drivers a chance to see where the puddles are and assess the grip. Yeah, it's a halfway house, isn't it? Because it won't be a safety car start. We'll still go 2x2 like a normal start, but they just get that extra lap and the clock is ticking. Looked like the drivers were expecting it. They were still weaving coming out of the last corner, so the teams would have informed them over the radio. But yeah, that car noted for being worked on. The normal penalty for that would be a drive-through, but I feel that would be quite harsh considering no performance, and it was just making sure it was closed. It didn't even look like it wasn't closed. It was more of a check, and no one was affected. That bodywork is effectively your door in a KTM. Now, if you're in a conventional car and the door hadn't closed properly, you'd open it and slam it shut. Here, you can't do that because you can't reach. You're strapped in, so you do need a mechanic's assistance. Yeah, a quirk or a negative of the KTM, depending on which way you look at it, I guess. Right, so Stefan Rossina then is on effectively lap 1 of the race now. The timing system is live, so as they come through the sectors, we're getting notional times. And this second race of the weekend underway even though we are still under controlled conditions. And that part of the racetrack still looked really gloomy, doesn't it?
Yeah, the spray being kicked up is pretty impressive, isn't it? Obviously, on these wet tyres with a new spec tyre this year. So the Pirelli's actually changed ethos quite a lot. The previous wet tyre has been out for a long time, and it was what I'd call a proper old school wet, big blocks, big cuts in it, whereas this new wet is more like what I'd call an intermediate. There's more contact patch, rubber to tarmac, so it's quicker ultimately over a lap, but will struggle a bit more to clear standing water. So I think we're okay for that in these conditions, but if it were to rain heavier, then we might have to keep an eye out for cars starting to aquaplane when that sandwich of water gets between the tyre and the tarmac, and the driver suddenly has no control over which way the car is going to go.
So here they come then up towards Scene, and as they do so, Stefan Rosina, Simon Birch, the Danish driver, to line up level with the Slovakian. There Neil Montserrat, the NM of NM Racing Team, who got as far as Formula Renault 3.5. No wonder he was brought up to being in Pro-Am rather than the AM class. And 89, the KTM of Matt Homola, no investigation necessary. So case dismissed.
Yeah, I'm glad they listened to me. That's all I'm listening to.
That's happened sooner or later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just interesting looking at the amount of drivers actually wearing open face helmets in this category. But then Neil Mossat in that silver Mercedes got his visor fully down, a tinted visor. So he's either doing that because he likes to look cool, or maybe there's a helmet cooler there which works more efficiently when it's closed. But it just seems quite odd to see that blue visor in that silver Mercedes fully down in quite overcast conditions.
So as Stefan Rosina there gives the car just a little weave just to make sure there's some temperature in the rubber, there is Neil Montserrat, and you've got the rest of the field filing through. Mercedes for Montserrat, behind him is the Homola KTM, behind that you've got the Pascal Givon red Mercedes. Remember, pit window between 25 and 35 minutes, but for 6 cars, so half the grid effectively, longer pit stops will be due, and a real step into the unknown now, with having had no wet running really all weekend. Now they've got to deliver on this first proper racing lap. So this will be the end of lap 1 when they come across the line, but our first racing lap is around the corner in question being the Virage du Pont. So Rosina in the Lamborghini, Birch in the KTM nearest to us. Behind him, number 7, that's Mauro Calamia. Neil Montserrat next to him on the grid, but remember Montserrat out-qualified him. The faster side of the grid is this one, where Rosina on pole sits. Up towards the lighting gantry they come, the lights on red still at the moment. The pace quickens, and we should get race 2 of the GT2 European Series powered by Pirelli underway. We do. The lights go green. It is blast off, and straight away Rosina it is who takes the lead. Montserrat gets up the inside of Simon Birch, who tried to come across and defend, but left it a little bit late, and eventually there was nothing he could do. Now he tries the outside against the Lamborghini. He's going to run out of road. He does. He's up the curb. Slots back on in second place. Calamia up the inside and tags Montserrat, and around goes Calamia. Mauro Calamity facing the wrong way briefly, back in the right direction now, and that's going to throw him right to the back of the pack.
Yeah, he just tried to get the undercut on him through 2. Montserrat did nothing wrong. He held his line, and Calamity just ran into the side of him and spun himself around effectively. KTM there getting down the inside of Racine. That's a great move. Really got the car rotated nicely, got on the throttle, and has got the punch. They're going to run side by side through turn number 7. This is a difficult corner to run side by side, and actually Birch tries to tuck back in, then gets pushed onto that slippery paint. You saw the car squirm. Montserrat now up to second with speed, potentially to take the lead.
Goes to the outside line, doesn't he? Gets a bit of a toe there. Splits the KTM and the Lamborghini. He's on the outside line. He's got his nose in front, but here comes Rosina back up the inside into the braking zone. Lamborghini on the inside retakes the lead. Mercedes slots back in behind, but Neil Montserrat now is absolutely on a mission, isn't he? And he knows he needs to strike now, early on in the race. Birch 3rd, 4th, Homola 5th coming through. Petrolisa ahead of Pascal Gibon. And there is Mauro Calamia at the back of the pack, having to rebuild his race now as Rosina leads up towards Scene. Behind him is Neil Montserrat. Small gap back to the KTM in 3rd place of Simon Birch. Then you've got there Matt Homola running in 4th place. But Rosina now trying to position the car to get away from Neil Montserrat, to break any toe that might have been there. Rossina's tough job, though, is that every corner, he's the pioneer. He's the first one to find the puddles and find what grip they may or may not be.
Yeah, you're the trailblazer. A big bit of standing water there, right on the exit of Labousse. Interestingly, Birch there looking to the inside, still hasn't got his headlights on. Is that intentional? Is that trying to be a bit undercover, try and catch someone napping rather than have the lights ablaze like the sister KTM behind? You can see Homler's headlights so much brighter and easy to spot through the spray. Interested to see if that is intentional or accidental. Birch actually was off the road there, wasn't he? Look how much time that's lost in the gap now, almost equidistant from him to Montserrat to Homler behind.
So a challenging first racing lap as they come up over the timing line now. Philippe Pret, in the meantime, making good progress on the back of the grid as the leader goes by then. So Rossina 8/10 up on Nil Montserrat. Third is Simon Birch, who's falling away just a little bit. Where is he in the spray? There he is, finally comes out the other side of it. In fourth place, Matto Homler. Fifth is Pirelli, going better in this race than he did when he thought he had a puncture. It was a sort of phantom puncture in the first race. Replay here of what happened off the start. Have a look at Calamia.
Yeah, super aggressive from the KTM. Birch going around the outside, but yeah, look at the fourth car, the gold car. Gets this run on, tight here, so he's always going to understeer from this point. The front's not going to grip. And yeah, Montserrat was on his line and he just understeered into him and tapped himself round into a lazy full 360 spin.
Montserrat got away very lightly because that could have sent both of them spinning, and with a whack into the side of the car, it, yes, briefly unsettled it, but Montserrat was able to correct that and stand his ground and didn't really lose much time. And there was the mistake from Rossina down at the bottom of the circuit at turn 5, going deep into the corner. That opened the door for Simon Birch, who just briefly got his nose in front, came out the other side of the corner. Rossina found a bit of traction on the outside. That was the inside line for the next part of the circuit, and as he claimed the line, there was really nowhere for Birch to go other than up the curb.
Yeah, and that just lost some traction, which then gave that silver Mercedes a great drive to blast round and to draw level then with the Lamborghini of Rossina in the lead, but couldn't get round the outside there. Rossina just really holding station, able to dictate the corner from the inside.
As the race leading Stefan Rossina then now comes up through the right-hander of scene with Nil Montserrat 8/10 back at the start of this lap. Now, Matto Homler's KTM faded rather in the first race, and I would suggest it's doing the same thing again. It's already dropped 11/10 against a similar car of Simon Birch. There going through is the Mercedes in the hands of Pascal Gibon ahead of Jordan Boisson. That's Oliver Freimuth in his Lamborghini. He was on the podium in the first race, but now he will have a slightly longer pit stop. Now, as far as the Pro-Am class is concerned, Rossina will have to serve 3 seconds longer than Birch in the pits and 5 seconds longer than Nil Montserrat. So right now, Montserrat, if he can stay within 5 seconds, is going to be well placed for stint 2, and he gives the car to Alberto De Martin, his co-driver.
Yeah, he did strong at the end of his stint, didn't he, De Martin, earlier, so they could be on, and obviously Montserrat's pace actually got them upgraded from the AM class up to the Pro-Am class. So yeah, that car has overperformed this weekend, I would say, considering the experience. As we see that car running wide, the yellow Maserati, so easy to do. Just there isn't the grip there that you think there is for the front axle, and the car just carries on quite a loose trajectory in essence.
Jordan Boisson in that yellow Maserati going nicely in this opening stint as the leaders go by, and a big send up the inside. That was Calamia coming back at Pret, the two Maseratis together. This is for 6th overall. Philippe Pret, remember, is in AM. Calamia is in Pro-Am, and he's got the drive off the corner, has Mauro Calamia. Tries to squeeze up the inside, heading now down into the braking zone for turn 3. Philippe Pret fends him off there, but goes deep into the corner, outbrakes himself, goes wide. Calamia gets up the inside, that's then the outside for 4, the inside for 5. The road should come to Mauro Calamia here. It does. Pret goes wide and eventually just has to let him go.
Great battle, though, between the two Maseratis there, wasn't it? Pret really fighting hard. Calamia just wants to get back up to where he was. What does his pace allow him? I think he's definitely a top 4, if not top 3 speed car at the moment. He's now got a bit of space to run into, so the next few laps we'll be able to see his true pace.
So on the Mistral straight, Calamia trying to get away, heading up towards the chicane. The next target is Petrolisa there in number 294 Mercedes that he shares with Andrzej Rokos, the Czech driver Petrolisa, the Slovakian is Andrzej Rokos, and that is Italian Mauro Calamia then accelerating out of the chicane. Stefan Rossina in the meantime is still building this lead quite nicely. He's also done the fastest lap of the race so far. We haven't had many flying laps, I'll grant you, but he's now built that lead to 2 seconds over Nil Montserrat. So having thought pre-race Montserrat might be a dark horse, he's struggling at the moment to match the Rossina pace.
Yeah, and again, it might just be the unknown. Have they run that car in the wet on this tyre? obviously Montserrat's a very experienced driver, but if the car setup isn't right, there's only so much the driver can overcome. So yeah, could be a bit of a hard stint. They could do a tyre pressure adjustment in the pit stop, which can start from 25 minutes into the race to 35. So we're 13 minutes away and change at the moment.
So the Nil Montserrat Mercedes pushing on, but good sectors from Stefan Rossina. As here Calamia still trying to rebuild the race, don't forget, from being last out of the first corner after his big spin. He comes down to the Virage du Pont. The leader goes through. So Stefan Rossina clear now by 3.6 seconds. He is driving off into the distance, isn't he? He's building the gap lap after lap after lap. There is Montserrat second, and he in turn is lapping quicker than Simon Birch. Birch to Hommler. That gap's come down by nearly a second on that lap. So Hommler responding as Calamia lines up to have a go at Petrolicia. Big flash of the lights as I am on my way. Through he goes.
Yeah, big send, very fair from Licia there. He was not looking to defend that, different classes, quite wise driving. He was more worried about not losing any time to Philippe Perret behind him in the other Maserati, of course. But yeah, Hommler looks quite strong again now, doesn't he? We saw that sort of yo-yo of pace from him in race one in dry conditions. And yeah, Rossina, the only car on track that doesn't need his windscreen wipers on. I also thought it was quite telling at the end of the formation lap. He was still the only car without a windscreen wiper on. It looked like he knew he was going to lead round turn 1 and 2.
Yeah, quite. I feel like confidence is there. So fastest lap to Rossina, 2:20 is what he has done, whereas in the earlier race today in the dry, the fastest lap was 2:06. It gives you an idea of how much slower the times are because of these change of conditions. There you've got the class order: Rossina from Montserrat from Birch, Hommler, Calamia in Pro-Am, Petrolicia currently leading in Am from Philippe Pret, then Jordan Boisson, Pascal Gibon next, and Oliver Freimuth is next, and penultimate within the Am category. There is Pret now putting himself onto the back of Petrolicia. This is for the class lead, Mercedes versus Maserati. So that battle heads up towards Scene, and Philippe Pret conscious that he's got to make a longer pit stop. So he needs to get the lead on the track and then try and build that gap, because some of it's going to be taken off him when he serves that longer regulation stop.
It's been a mega drive from Pret. Obviously started in last position after not doing a lap in qualifying 2 after that gearbox issue stopped that car running. So the main thing in the back of his mind, of course, is that his extra pit stop time, 14 seconds extra than Petrolicia in front of him. So he needs to get past him and then obviously clear him by as big a margin as possible. Anything less than 14 seconds, though, would mean that he would not retake the lead after the pit stops.
True enough, as they come now on towards the Virage de la Tour, heading up towards the end of the lap. So 3.6 seconds was the gap between the race-leading Rossina and Nil Montserrat in second place. The gap now is 5.3, another fastest lap by Rossina. And here with the wiper working overtime, Philippe Pret, who's good friends with Stefan Ortelli, who is here looking after Philippe, but also Louis Pret yesterday, who was in the GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup opener, the Monegasque residents all, as no doubt Stefan Ortelli will have a thought or two about racing in the rain that he passed on to Philippe before the race started. 6/10 now between these two, fighting for the lead of the class. And although Pret does lose time in the pits, what he gains on some of that is that he doesn't have a co-driver. So when he goes back into the race, he knows exactly what to expect.
Yeah, as we see, it's KTM spinning there, 789. Miniberger obviously starting in last after that driver change. Can he get the car fired up? Yes, he can. He'll just turn it all the way around. What was the issue? Coming into turn 14, rolls the car in. It's just going to over-rotate there, and into just a lazy 180 spin. You can see how grippy that surface is as it grips up on that. It got bucked around, and yeah, my guess from watching the outside there is he's just stayed on the brake slightly too long, try and rotate the car using that, putting the weight on the front axle. But when you put weight on the front axle, you take away from the rear, and that's where the rear's gone light and just looped around on him. He has actually just boxed straight away as well. So maybe there was a more of an issue with it, and it wasn't the painted surface gripping the car up and hopping it around. Maybe it was something else potentially, because the car looked quite odd, didn't it? It was bucking backwards. Maybe it was just in gear as it's rolling backwards and it's not happy, but nevertheless, Miniberger has pitted. It
was a noisy spin as well, lots of tire squeal we could hear as the car went around. So now you've got Petrolicia, who's having a good race here, keeping the very experienced Philippe Pret at bay. Petrolicia new to the championship, new to the car as well, and has to go defensive as they come up to Le Beausset. Pret tries to squeeze up the inside, and contact is made. Around goes the Mercedes, off goes the Maserati, and that is going to get looked at, no question, because Philippe Pret went for a gap that, yeah, there was a bit of room, but clearly not enough room.
I concur, yeah. For me, Petrolista...
Yellow flag turn 10.
And yeah, for me, that damage as well, I think...
Yellow flag turn 11.
I think that will be race done for Philippe Pret there, unless they can get enough tank tape on that car to set it down.
All sectors green, all sectors green.
Structurally, I think it's okay, but that bodywork caved in on that corner. Any radiator damage, he is boxing by the looks of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought Petrolista closes the door initially quite early and obviously, but Philippe Pret decides he wants to send the move and can't get out of it, and he's then a bit target fixated. I think he's looking at the back of the Mercedes, trying not to hit it, and he ends up hitting it. Of course, these conditions the drivers don't know, so Philippe Pret
Incident involving cars 294 and 1 is noted.
Offline, they don't know the grip, so I think they're just on the sort of area where the cars tend to lock their brakes the most into turn 12, so very slippy, and if Philippe Pret has crossed that slippy area, I'd imagine the ABS has gone berserk, and it just feels like the car's sped up, and that's why he's gone in the back. But yeah, for me, Petrolista fully innocent in that.
So the Philippe Pret car heads to the pit lane, and the race director, Noia Santamaria, certainly being kept busy in race control all of a sudden with yellow flags in the sectors and with incidents needing to be noted. There is what's left of Philippe Pret's Maserati coming down the pit road. Thomas Miniberger has also stayed in the pit lane for nearly 3 minutes, so that suggests that KTM had a problem as well.
Interesting, that's Pret leaving the pits. The LP team are earlier in pit lane, so they've obviously looked over it, decided it's okay, and sent it. And I can't really see that they've put any tape on that car at all, so it must have been a stop, visual and go. But I'd be surprised if that car gets to the end of the race without shedding any more bodywork, that's for sure. Unless
they thought, well, it's okay for now, let's worry about it at the window when we've got a bit more time. So either way, Philippe Pret has been sent back into the race, and it is Stefan Rossina there on his own now, 5.6 seconds to the good. Now, he was quicker in the first race than Bronek Formanek, but equally, you've got the quicker drivers in pretty much every car for this part of the race, this first stint. That's Pret on his own now. He will, of course, fall down the order, and it looks as though Thomas Miniberger's car did have a technical drama, which pitched it into the spin before it has not rejoined the race.
Good news, though, is Petrolista is still running. Actually did his fastest first sector the lap after he got turned around. So that car, yes, it's got some rear bodywork damage, but structurally you would say it looks okay from the lap times he's still able to produce.
Over the line goes Simon Birch, still running third, chasing after Neil Montserrat. Interesting, isn't it, the way the Mercedes has gone, because after a good feisty first lap, Montserrat's really faded away against Rossina. Now, OK, he's not done as much racing perhaps of late, and he's still perhaps feeling his way around a GT2 car. That is Mauro Calamia, fifth, and he is 5 seconds back from Matto Homola. That's Oliver Freimuth, who is in 9th place, coming now up towards the timing line once more. He will break the beam and go through.
Second in class for Freimuth. He's had a strong opening stint thus far. Another solo driver, of course, so he will have a slightly longer pit stop. 7 seconds for him extra than the base 168 seconds that pit entry to pit exit must take for these cars as a standard to make sure it's fair. Incident involving 294 and number 1 investigation, turn number 11. So yeah, my prediction is going to be that's a drive-through penalty with probably a 30-second stop and go to boot for the number 1 car.
Yeah, the stewards will have a look at it. Petrolista has carried on, but of course that took him out of the class lead. So it means that this car now leads out, Jordan Boisson's Maserati from Oliver Freimuth's Lamborghini, and then Pascal Gibon's Mercedes third. That's an odd one, because Gibon was really good in his stint in the first race, but the car at the moment may not like the wet, really hasn't come alive. Petrolista's Mercedes, in contrast, was doing really nicely until it was pretted and turned into that spin. Philippe Pret in 10th place then after his first pit stop. He's got his regulation stop still to do. But Jordan Boisson here out of Carrera Cup France accelerates out of the chicane, back onto the Mistral. We're only about 4 minutes or so away from the window.
Penalty information, penalty information. Car number 1 has a drive-through penalty for causing a collision. Car number 1 has a drive-through penalty for causing a collision.
So that's now Santamaria, the race director, explaining it, as you were predicting, drive-through for Philippe Pret for this incident.
Yeah, just watch it, like I said, as it goes across the rubber. I think it just speeds up on underneath him, and the ABS would have still stopped it from locking, but just isn't stopping as efficiently as possible. The painted area doing a good job. When you get onto that red, it's even more abrasive than the blue line, so you can actually flat spot your tyres just by having a spin like that. But at the moment, it seems like both cars are there. So the drive-through penalty is going to lose Pret roughly 42 seconds. So yeah, a big penalty, and it also looked like his splitter was hanging down a bit there, but good work from race control, I have to say. I've been a driver under Noose in GT Open in the past, and a really, really strong race director, and annoyingly when she's given me penalties, they've always been right, and when I've got away with stuff, I think I've always just been about right. But that's what I like to see from race control. What was that, less than 4 minutes in between incident and penalty? Drivers know where they stand, and then they can get on with their race and try and resolve their issues later on.
And a drive through here does hurt, doesn't it? Because it's a long pit lane and it's a fast pit straight.
Yeah, it really is. It's one of the longest pit lanes we go to, apart from Spa running the full F1 endurance link-up. And yeah, 42 seconds doing 50 kilometres an hour is particularly painful.
Now here is the recovering Petrolisa. Pascal Gibon, I should say, trying to go after Oliver Freimuth for second in AM. So the number 53 Mercedes, that is not yet illustrating the same pace that it did in the dry, comes down towards turn 5. Oliver Freimuth just up the road ahead. The race is 2.5 minutes, give or take, away from the window opening for the mandatory pit stops. Stefan Rossina well clear in the lead. Philippe Pret now, even before he has the drive-through, he's 36, nearly 37 seconds off the pace of anybody. He's that far away. So he's got a massive gap to make up. He's got a drive-through to serve, and then he's got the regulation stop with extra time. So it's all going to unravel for Philippe Pret, isn't it? He needs a safety car after the pit window. Yeah,
at least he only lives about an hour and 30 minutes from it to Monaco's the positive I can find him. I actually think he'll go a lap down once he serves his drive-through, because he's a minute and 40 behind, and he's going to lose nearly that gap that he is to a lap behind with the drive-through. This is going to be very, very difficult from Philippe Pret really to get anything but where he is at the moment, 10th place.
Through scene goes number 53, which is Pascal Gibon, dropping back a little bit this time from Oliver Freimuth. So Philippe Pret, we know, has a drive-through to serve. Thomas Miniberger's KTM is seemingly out of the race, been in the pits for nearly 9 minutes. So the man behind the RTR project's concern out of the race, as there Pascal Gibon still hustles on in pursuit of Oliver Freimuth. Up front, 10 seconds now between Rossina and Montserrat. And in third, Simon Birch. The KTM's therefore not quite as well suited as far as the weather conditions are concerned.
No, strange that one. I thought it could be the case as we see a spin for the 53 car there. Pascal Gibon just looping it round. Was there any contact? He was obviously very close to the back of Freimuth at times, or was it what we saw earlier from Miniberger at the same corner, just rotating the car too much? Car looks okay, carries on. You can see the drive-through penalty board being shown there. Some bodywork damage still flapping away from that incident earlier as well there. So yeah, these cars are going through the walls, splitted, just touching the floor. That's right on the borderline of that car getting a mechanical warning flag to come in. Positive thing is, though, by the end of this lap, pit lane will be open for the pit stop window, which opens in 15 seconds.
So Thomas Miniberger confirmed as being out of the race. There is Oliver Freimuth through, and a replay here of self-induced spin. Pascal Gibon just a little bit too happy with the power. Pit window opens.
Pit window is open. Pit window is open.
And around goes Pascal Gibon. So Nois Santa Maria confirms the pit window is open. There'll be some teams eager to get the stops out of the way. Other teams eager to keep their gun driver in for as long as possible.
Yeah, I think that's applicable definitely to the top 5, isn't it? From Rossina, Montserrat, Birch, Hommler and Camilla. They're going all the way through. The other ones are a bit more open to strategy, apart from Philippe Pret, who is in the pits. He hasn't got a driver change to do, or Freimuth, obviously in the other Lamborghini there. And Pret has just done his drive-through. Does stay on the lead lap, but it was close. There is Rossina. Lovely artistic shot there from our production crew, just showing how close he is to going a lap down. So he needs to stay out so he doesn't go a lap down under a pit stop in case there were a yellow flag, full course yellow or safety car, sorry.
So Pret, 2 stops he has made, or 2 visits to the pits, but he's still got the regulation stop to do, so he's got to be in for a third time. and that's when 148 seconds plus 14 extra for success and soloism are going to have to be factored in as well. Stefan Rossina now, having done a very, very good job, is 11 seconds to the good. He just needs to tick off the next 2 or 3 laps before he gives way to Bronek Formanek. That car is looking as though it's going to be hard to stop unless Formanek makes an error.
Yeah, and he looked pretty peerless earlier on, but doesn't know the car anywhere near as well as Rossina, his teammate, so that will be a bit tougher for him. Montserrat really in his own bit of real estate here, just able to cruise around. He's at a pretty metronomic pace, always in the 21s or 22s. He's been nice and consistent, but just hasn't had that ultimate pace of Rossina, and that's why the gap has grown to 11 seconds.
There is Montserrat's Mercedes on the Mistral straight. Alberto de Martin will take over from him for the second part of the race. And Neil Montserrat having to, for the moment at least now, settle for second place. He tried everything he could on the opening lap, but the Mercedes looking a bit more of a handful there going through the chicane. 53 is in. So Pascal Gibon now gives way to Christophe Bourret. Car empty as the fuel goes in. And then they can carry on. This is why it's a longer pit stop, to allow a bit of refuelling and for it to be a safe, unflustered stop.
Yeah, I hope they don't get penalty. The driver's door's not actually closed. In the regulation, that door must be closed. They went to close it and it kind of bounced back open, so I assume the window net or potentially a belt is in the way and it stopped it. It would be a harsh penalty, but to the letter of the law, that door should be closed, and it was not.
Stefan Rossina then has made short work of the opposition. He was saying after the first race this will be a harder race to win. Well, part of that is because they've got an extra 3 seconds to serve in the pits over the car that is in third place. So an extra 3 seconds over the KTM of Simon Birch, an extra 5 over Neil Montserrat. Going to be an interesting second stint, isn't it, with different drivers and, of course, a slightly different situation on the gaps after the compensation times, the success compensation times are taken into account. Another lap done by Rossina, so he's not for pitting yet.
No, and he's still got 7 minutes to go until he has to, so the team will be working out how many more laps he can get. He can definitely get 2, possibly 3. Pace obviously much slower in the wet conditions than the dry, and the drivers getting in as well won't have done a single lap in the wet, so their first experience of it is when they take the pit limiter off and leave pit lane, and they've got to quickly find their feet and work out how hard and how fast they can push. Someone pushing hard there, Birch, on the exit of 2. Maybe those wet tyres starting to warm up a bit. We've seen some drivers moving offline to try and find wetter parts of the track to help cool them, but that was a good save there from Birch.
It was indeed, wasn't it? Simon Birch and the best of the KTMs. We started with 3, we're down to 2 with the demise of Thomas Miniberger, but Simon Birch to give way shortly to Thomas Anderson. Presses on up now towards the right of Saint-Baume, splashes his way through the corner. I think the road is probably less wet than it was. There's the big, big slide he had coming out of turn 2, and it was wrong even before he got to the curb, and that can often put you in a slide as well. Certainly less spray being generated, less standing water being dragged off the ground. So the track surface perhaps is a little bit better than it was at the very start of the race, as there in has come Mauro Calamia. This car's flattered to deceive rather, hasn't it? Given its success at Barcelona last year, it's never quite come alive in the races in the way anticipated. Admittedly, Pampanini was in trouble in the first race, and Calamia's spin on lap 1 here hasn't helped the situation either.
Yeah, there's been flashes, hasn't there, of pace, but the consistency to hook a stint together has not been there this weekend. Obviously a full championship year for that car, so I'm sure we'll see it back at the front as Pret looked like he was going pretty slow in front of this Lamborghini. Is that a problem that's manifested from the damage earlier, or is that just the pace difference between this Lamborghini and the Maserati of Pret?
The Lamborghini then storms on. Philippe Pret still owes us the regulation pit stop, despite his 2 visits to pit lane. And Stefan Rossina will be thinking about when he needs to come in. Maybe this could be the lap, then he doesn't have to think about overtaking that Maserati. Nope, stays out, comes out of the Virage du Pont, then onto another lap, as this is the second place car, Neil Montserrat. And his option this time is to stay out. So content with the pace of the car. And Philippe Pret, as Joe has been saying, is in danger of going a lap down, especially with now Rossina bearing down on him.
Yeah, that damage must be hurting him. He's 5 seconds a lap slower now than Rossina, so I think Rossina will clear him somewhere around turn 7 or 8 by this lap, as we now see Pampanini leaving in that number 7 Maserati. Drivers really going offline now, trying to find this wetter part of the track. The wetter, the cooler the tyre will run, and hopefully that will make the tyre last better. We've still got just under half the race to go.
So Roberto Pampanini back on track, and that number 7 Maserati, having dropped places while it's pitted, will get some of them back as the other stops cycle through. Mato Homola is in to give way to Laura Krahammer in number 89 KTM. And the rather mangled Maserati is about to drop a lap then, as up comes Stefan Rossina. Philippe Pret having to cope with the damage as well as the spray. Offline now goes Rossina and throws that water into the face of Pret. So the Lamborghini does go a lap up on the Maserati. Both of them, of course, still to serve their pit stop. So that gives you an idea of how much time Pret has lost already and how much he is losing a legacy of the damage.
Yeah, tough race. He's almost just got to circulate and hope that others have problems in front of him to get a podium out of this would be a very lucky result. And like I said, that damage to me seems to be getting worse. Is that bonnet getting higher up against the windscreen, air getting underneath it? Definitely structurally, that will be tough for it to get to the end of the race. I'd even suggest he probably wants to stay off some of the curbs to take out some of the jolts and energy that could potentially dislodge that bodywork further.
So that's Stefan Rossini, your race leader, now 14 seconds to the good. And he's running out of drive time, isn't he? He might come in, you know, he should probably come in this time to be on the safe side, I think. But let's see what he does. He's heading towards the end of the lap. We've got just over 27.5 minutes to go. A flying lap to 2:20, yeah, a bit marginal. I think he ought to bail this time because it is still slow. And yes, he's in. He comes the pit side of the white line. Out of Virage de la Tour. In he comes, and also in is Philippe Pret. This is his 3rd visit, so he's a regular here, but this is the regulation pit stop. And remember that Rossina has to, well, Rossina to give way to Formanek. They have an extra 10 seconds to serve as the race 1 winners. Yeah,
show me a more Lamborghini pit entry as well. Screaming V10 into a flame out the back of the exhaust, then hard on the brakes. That looked super spectacular. Rossina, their team towards the end of pit lane. Philippe Pret, LP just there, sort of beyond the halfway point. Monserrat in as well, and Birch. Expect Brosson and Petrolisa to be in also, so relatively busy pit lane. These teams will get to work, working out the minimum time. Driver jumps out, close the door, get the fuel in, then the driver change can go on. Looks like the mechanic just getting something sorted before they close the door there, and then the fuel will go in via the dump churn. That can put 25 litres of fuel in roughly 6 seconds. So any second now, they'll come off with that, and their driver will jump round and be helped into the car.
Bronek Formanek then, the tall, bearded Slovakian, ready to jump on board, the race 1 winner with his full face helmet. Stefan Rossini, you saw getting out, has the sort of semi-open face helmet. That is Simon Birch strapping, or will strap in a moment, Thomas Anderson, so he gets the belts ready for him, but you've got to thread your way through the roll cage into the car, gets Thomas Anderson, and you can see that's what the bodywork looks like when it's open. So that's your door, effectively. The roof goes up and forward, gives you quite a big aperture in that respect, but a small aperture to get through the cage.
Don't get the logic myself. It feels like when an engineer is given carte blanche to do what they want, and no one actually questions them early enough in a project. And yeah, I mean, it really limits the size of the driver that can get in that car and the roll cage there. And yeah, an interesting concept to say the least.
Whereas the Maserati is perhaps the more conventional. So out has got Jordan Boisson. In now gets, for the second into the race, another newcomer to the championship this year. Patrick Charlet, and that was leading in Am, wasn't it? So now Bronek Formanek gets ready to go. So the number 11 Michenek Motorsport with Borghera Motorsport Lamborghini, the engines will fire. And
seen are not happy. The official saying something there, saying the rain light's not on. I think that's the problem, but I think it might turn itself off when the pit lane speed limiter is on.
And a shrug.
But I think the official's saying you can't go out until that goes on.
Pit window is closed. Pit window is closed.
Well, he has left, so.
Well, the car's on its way, but we'll see if anything comes of that. The scrutineers may report it to the race control team. So Formanek blasts away. Pret gets back into the race, but he's still a lap down. Then you've got Alberto De Martin.
Let's try and see if the rain light is on the back of this Lamborghini, because that, to me, was what they were talking about. The rain light sits pretty much where the number plate would be historically on the back of their car, and it is a requirement in conditions like this once a wet race is. Yeah, and it is still off that sort of rectangular shape in between the number 11 on the back bumper and the Pro-Am sticker. That should be illuminated, so that is a question for race control. The team will argue that there's not that much spray now, you don't need it, but it is in the regulations.
So Bronek Formanek leads the way, and at the end of this next lap, once everyone comes across the line, we'll get an idea of the order, but more importantly the gaps. There in second spot now is Alberto De Martin. So he takes over from Neil Montserrat in number 115 Mercedes. And now the challenge comes for the incoming driver to assess car and track and grip and everything else and push straight away.
Yep, straight on it, and a bit early on the brakes there. You could see the car pitch under braking like usual, and then popped up for a while as he realised he'd been on the brakes slightly too early, so trying to recover some of that potential time loss as he blasts away. Still kicking up some spray, but still no rain light. The team will just be asking the driver to check it's definitely on. The switch hasn't been hit by mistake. Then there's that damaged Maserati MC20, then the Mercedes GT2 AMG, and then the KTM. So all 4 cars that we are having in this race manufacture-wise represented within 300 metres of track.
So they're going through is Thomas Anderson. So the KTM, which was running well earlier on, is a lot closer now, isn't it, to the Mercedes, even though it had to serve a slightly longer pit stop.
Yeah, someone doing a pit stop at the moment that's way too long is Hommler and that KTM being in the pits for 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So that must be a problem with that car there. So maybe another retirement for KTM there.
It's disappointing that, because it's problems in the first race. I think you made the point earlier, it yo-yoed in terms of pace. And now it's just a yo, really. There's no thought of that getting back into the race for the moment. It is at least 1 lap down, about to become 2. So Bronick Formanek in the Lamborghini leads the way, depending on whatever the scrutineers didn't like. There you can see the rain light on the back of the KTM, showing how it should be. So coming out of the Virage du Pont now, back onto the power, rain light on, and Birch going after De Martin, whose rain light is equally visible. So race control, the scrutineers will be happy with that. The gap between Mercedes and KTM is 1.2 seconds. They're 14.5 back, though, from Bronick Formanek. It would be very disappointing were that to be a black and orange meatball flag for a mechanical problem for the leading Lamborghini, because neither driver has done anything wrong at all.
Yeah, exactly. And just getting some report from the pit lane from Alex, actually, the RTR Projects car 924 that was hit earlier, that they got some of the bodywork off, but the tank tape hasn't helped to that car. So that's going to be another question mark potentially for race control. Is the bodywork safe enough for that to finish the race with 21.5 minutes remaining?
So there is the Maserati, which is now in the hands of Patrick Charlet. Now this should still be in the lead of AM, should it not? Because it didn't have to serve any extra time in the pits. So that good first stint by Boisson has worked into their favour. Over the line it goes, and Charlet will be ahead of Oliver Freimuth, yes, by 5.4 seconds. As here, for second place in the race, Thomas Anderson is right on the tail of Alberto De Martin, and on the attack as well as they come out of the chicane.
Yeah, this is a good pace from Anderson. Looked strong at times in race 1, but so did De Martin. And 2 completely different cars, headlight flashes going now, so the aggression really ramping up. De Martin looked fully focused forwards, didn't seem to be looking in his mirror from that shot we could see. But at the moment, Anderson definitely looks like he's got the pace, runs wide on that exit curb. Not close enough to get a move on the go yet, but I don't think it will be too long until he can.
A little bit deep maybe through Le Beausset. Goes the Mercedes, as back onto the power. Now comes Alberto De Martin, new to GT2 this year, whereas Simon Birch, Thomas Anderson shared this car last year. Thomas Anderson well versed in the KTM and looking for a way around the outside of the Mercedes to no avail. Quite a bit of spray at that part of the circuit, but the road just dips a little bit. So in that dip, you find the rain, and up the curb goes Anderson, very committed to all of this. Needs to strike while the iron's hot and all that, but he was putting himself in jeopardy there. Another full send up the inside at turn 15. Through he goes.
Wow, I like it. Super aggressive. Is De Martin able to get the cutback? Looks like he will. It'll be a drag race down the pit straight, and he's already cleared him. So in too deep there from Anderson. Needs to recalculate that one if he's going to do the same again. But yeah, there's really not much gradient around here at Paul Ricard. Only 30 metres of elevation change. So one of our flatter circuits out there when we drive into the circuit together, and that mountain road where you're trying to put me over the side of the cliff. It's amazing how flat they found this little plateau in the southern part of France. But they've made a great racetrack here.
Well, they have indeed. Although I'll tell you, if you ever run around this place, that climb up to Signes is pretty steep. We understand from the pit lane that Mathieu Hommeler's race is done. This was the move that Thomas Anderson pulled coming into the Virage du Pont, and it's quite wet offline there where he had to do the overtaking, but he got the car stopped and was able to come through ahead, except that the Mercedes fought back in a straight line and got its nose ahead over the timing line.
Yeah, proper good vision there from De Martin to be able to look through, realise he needs to cut back and go. And yeah, shame for the Homolour KTM electrical gremlins. We hear as the car goes off, and that is Anderson into the wall, onto the Mistral, turn 7. He was in front of De Martin when he went off, but I think that's going to have to be a full course yellow, and that will be the third and final
yellow
KTM.
Turn 7,
I think out of the race, that's
7.
going to be difficult for that to get going. That was a rather large impact.
Neo Santamaria, the race director, first of all tells the teams that there's the yellow at turn 7, and now will assess whether that car is going to move, so she'll give it time, and if after, let's say, 30 seconds to a minute there's no movement, then intervention may be required. A safety car would be really bad news for the leading Brunet Formanek Lamborghini. A full course yellow, in theory, the gap stay.
Yeah, exactly. Although Formanek was 4 seconds quicker than De Martin behind him, so I think he's safe from there. And wow, that KTM is built strong. And actually, suspension-wise, doesn't look too bad. I'd say the rear
all
right.
sectors green, all sectors green.
I'd say the rear right's got a bit of toe in potentially, a bit too much camber, but I might be wrong on that. But the rear wing is at a jaunty angle, so hopefully the team are on the radio telling him just to cruise back to pit lane because that car will not feel great at high speed.
There will be a little bit of debris just off the racetrack at turn 7. But here, Thomas Anderson brings the car back to the pit lane. It's not being a good race for KTM because this is potentially all 3 of them gone for various maladies.
Yeah, I mean, that was I'm pretty sure he was in second place. I think he was front of De Martin's Mercedes when he went off, and pace was good, but treacherous conditions. One small misjudgment, slightly too much power, slightly too wide potentially out of 7. The car's just looped round and there's not much runoff to the inside there. It actually didn't used to be a tyre wall back in the day. It was just solid wall, and the Circuit Paul Ricard got a bit bored of having to replace the barrier, so they finally conceded and put some tyres there. So let's have a look. He's just touching the curb. Bit too much throttle, too much steering lock on an exit curb, and it loops round, and even with the painted surface still probably has it. And that's the move just done as he turns in, so he's on a narrower angle which forces him on a wider trajectory, and yeah, just loops round on him, probably still a good 50-60 km/h impact. So yeah, I am impressed with how strong that car is. It looks like he's staying out as well,
it does.
so he's not boxing, which I'm surprised about, but he's definitely going to get the mechanical flag. I think the angle of that rear wing is long way off a kilter, so yeah, that's for me not a safe car to continue racing.
He's got about 8 laps, 9 laps maybe, before the end of the race. So what they want to try and do is keep the car going and get points. Because with other KTMs having dropped out, it's worth persevering, even if the pace is reduced. But amazingly, as you say, given the lack of downforce from that rear wing now, doesn't seem to be terribly phased by it. Brunet Formanek, in the meantime, is now, gosh, 24 seconds up the road. This is perhaps even more dominant display.
Yeah, he's been really, really good, and so far nothing about the rain light there, so hopefully for them they get away with it and it doesn't need to be bought in. But that Anderson car, obviously sponsored by Milwaukee, their slogan is nothing but heavy duty, and I think the way the car is at the moment, that'd be quite a good advertisement for them, that car can keep going on. Or do they need to get in the box and get some Milwaukee tools on it to get it fixed, and happy to finish the race.
Certainly need some heavy duty tank tape, that's for sure, to patch it all up. But they can, if they can avoid a pit stop, they will, because that's just going to eat more time. They need to try and not attract attention of race control, keep going round and round and round. We'll have a look at a lap time now, which will be without a spin, hopefully, when the car next comes by, and see how much time it's lost relative to an earlier lap. Brunet Formanek, in the meantime, goes through, and this is a rather lonely second now. Alberto De Martin with that dent in the door from the aggressive Calamia off the start when he hit Neil Montserrat. Second place. They are now after points. They haven't got the pace of that Lamborghini, so De Martin just needs to keep out of trouble. Yeah,
it was quite a big whack, wasn't it? It's quite a big dent in the side door there, the right-hand door, passenger door. So yeah, they were lucky to escape, and this was the culprit somewhere on that front left, unless it was the wheel. I can't see a single mark on that car. So the Maserati got away with that. A bit of debris on the pit straight there, right in the middle of the track, drivers having to avoid at the moment. But so far, this has been a strong stint from Pampini, and he's third place overall at the moment.
Yeah, Pampini benefiting from the troubles of the KTM and also from the demise of Homolour. The KTM, I mean, by Thomas Anderson's accident, but Homolour's retirement has also given them a place. So now up into third spot. Now he is lapping slower, in fact, than De Martin. So he's a bit in no man's land, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's tough then as a driver to know how hard to push. 13 seconds behind the guy in front, but 18 seconds in front of the guy behind. So how much risk do you put into it? And in unknown conditions, that is a bit of a million-dollar question.
Now, this car has lost its AM lead because Oliver Freimuth has taken over, and Patrick Charlet, although he took over the car in the lead, has dropped back to second within AM. So Patrick Charlet having to be mindful of the conditions, maybe. Oliver Freimuth, much more experienced driver, being a bit more cavalier and braver for sure. What about this Mercedes battle that comes through, where you've got now up into second, in fact, in the class, going through André Rocoche, and third, Christophe Bourret. So Patrick Charlet is now from the lead down to fourth in AM. And as well, that just happened on that lap. It has. I think Charlet may have had a moment because he's fallen a long, long way back.
Yeah, 10 seconds lost on that last lap alone. So not sure if that's just pure pace for him or there is a problem he's nursing with that car. But this looks like a battle that could start to rage on here. Bourret was 3 seconds a lap quicker than Rocache on that last lap, so closing in, and this is the leader of the AM class, Freimuth, 16 seconds ahead of those two Mercedes that we just saw. So he's cruising, and he's got a rain light working quite correctly on that Lamborghini as well.
Oliver Freimuth up to the chicane. Race leader is on lap number 19. In the dry, earlier on in the day, we got 25 laps out of the race. And there is Oliver Freimuth in the almost understated Huracan, if you can have an understated Lamborghini. And it's almost JPS colour scheme. It comes now into the right-hander of Signe. Oliver's son, Sebastian, a regular Porsche racer. And Oliver Freimuth himself did have a spell in Porsche racing, but in recent years, Lamborghini Super Trofeo has been his base, and now bringing the one-make monobrand GT car into GT2 with one or two tweaks. It comes in through a sort of invitational aspect. He's ever so cautious through Le Beausset there, isn't he?
Yeah, but you can afford to be, can't you, with a 16-second lead. That's that hard bit as a driver to work out how hard to push and when. And Le Beausset is a tricky corner at the best of times. In these conditions, easy to pick up the throttle too early with too much steering lock on. And that's when a car always wants to rotate on you. So, yes, these cars have traction control, but traction control sometimes feels a bit more reactive than proactive because it can only deal with the slide you're giving it. As we see this Mercedes battle rage on, the damage from Pret still evident on that Rocache 284 car, and Bourret now looking to the inside, looking to get this move done in good time to take second place in the AM class.
So Christophe Bourret taking over from Pascal Gibon comes now out of turn 15, and the two Mercedes together. Remember that the car that is being driven by André Rocoche is the one that was given a big whack by Philippe Pret early on, so it may not be totally au point, but he's hanging on in there in second. Bourret third. Philippe Pret, by the way, is still circulating. He's done all three of his pit stops now. His drive-through penalty, his damage assessment, and his regulation stop. And he's going to be last in the race, last in class, if things stay as they are. But at least he'll take some points away. Yeah,
exactly that. And that's the name of the game for a championship. And all drivers will always focus on a full-year championship rather than a single race. But single races add up to the championship. So where do you put your money and priorities on that? But these Mercedes looking great, and the track is drying quite quickly, isn't it? Not too much spray now, and we're watching on, but I tell you who else will be watching on is the GT4 competitors who race after this. Are they going to gamble on slicks? If these guys were starting now, would they start on slicks? It's pretty close. If there's no spray, you should be on a slick tyre. There's spray probably on half of that, but the other half there is not. So conditions have changed quickly. It's not warm here, but there is a breeze, and the track seems to be drying quite quickly, relatively.
Into the chicane, finding a bit of standing water there was André Rocoche, and that just unsettles the number 294 RTR run Mercedes AMG. Behind him is Christophe Bourret, more familiar with this car, with GT2 as a concept, and trying to get himself onto terms with the number 294 Mercedes up the road ahead. But that, for newcomers to the series, to the car, to the championship, all looking really good. So I think Rocoche and Lichter will be forces to be reckoned with in AM as the year goes on. They're not that experienced a combination anyway. They've done relatively little racing in the past. This is Le Beausset, which was the corner that did for the black, white and red Mercedes early on in the race. Together they run, and Christophe Bourret on lap number 19 accelerates now out of Le Beausset. Doesn't let the car flow quite to the same degree that André Rocoche does. the race now with the clock ticking on down into the last 9 minutes or so for the race leading Bronek Formanek, who is now half a minute to the good. He is just dominating proceedings in that Lamborghini. But these two Mercedes are going to go right down to the wire, I think, in terms of this battle. The ice cap car, a good reflection of the conditions. It's pretty chilly here this weekend. Comes out of Virage Dupont once again. Last time when they crossed the line, the gap between them was 0.6 of a second. It's going to be round about that here again, I think, as Rokosh goes by, still second in AM, and then third in the class behind the margin 0.7. It is Bure.
Yeah, and I just wonder if some of that damage is slowing that car down. Some of the diffuser damage, you'll see it here as we pan through. It's a good third of that diffuser is missing, so potentially losing some of the downforce now. Bure with a slight run on them. And these cars are absolute beasts. I've actually driven one of these cars around here, so I know how these guys are getting on. So much power, so much grip, but to power to weight ratio, slightly different to GT3 in that regard. They've got more power, so in these conditions it makes them even livelier than a GT3 car, which we know how fast they are.
And Rokosh there deep into turn 5, got away with it, but that just gives a little bit of optimism maybe to Christophe Bure. These evenly matched cars, it's the same base car, of course, the Mercedes AMG GT2, albeit run by different teams, but the starting point the same. And Christophe Bure hoping he can use his greater experience of the car to good effect. But I tell you what, Andre Rokosh here is rising to the occasion, isn't he? He's doing a good job of defending. Up to the chicane they come. Sits in the middle of the road, so Bure can't go up the inside, doesn't really want to go around the outside, and so Rokosh fends him off once more.
Yeah, great racing, great defensive driving so far from Rokosh, just placing the car exactly where it needs to be, not allowing Bure a run there. And he's actually had a great chicane, hasn't he? He's doubled that gap between them at the moment, I would say. They are losing time to Freymouth, so the win, I think, is out of the question for these guys now. So this is the last battle for second place in class.
Up front, Bronek Formanek still running away with the race with a lead of 35 seconds from Alberto De Martin and then Roberto Pampanini. Now, Pampanini is chipping away at De Martin. He's 10.5 seconds back, but only, what, 6 3/4 minutes or so remaining in the race. So he is running out of time as Rokosh and Bure still come through together. Frustrating this for Bure, so close, but he can't find that last couple of tenths to have a go.
Yeah, obviously in the same cars, different teams, but the strengths and weaknesses will be very similar over the lap. So it's up to Bure to try something different. Can he roll a bit more speed into a corner? Can he try and square a corner off? And by that I mean going in deep like he is now, rotate the car early, get on the throttle earlier so you get a faster run down the next straight. But to do that, you do need to be a bit closer. That would only work if you're within a couple of lengths of that car. And at the moment, that gap's more like 4 to 5 lengths, isn't it? And it seems to be relatively constant at the moment. Leaders go by then. And here for the second and third places within AM, battle still together with the margin 0.7 of a second. Bronek Formanek then into the last 6 minutes comes out of the Virage Dupont. And this car has just gone like clockwork, hasn't it? You've got two quick drivers, two experienced drivers as well, and they know the Lamborghini very well indeed, so it all gels together quite nicely. Formanek comes across the line. That puts 21 laps in the book. 54 minutes into the race, goes through, and on his own. He's not had many playmates in this race, Bronek Formanek, but he's had the challenge of the track surface. Yeah, the only car that's doing a similar pace, oddly to me, is actually Philippe Pret in effective last position on track. The only car running at the back of the field there in ninth just did a 2:23 the lap before, and that was the same as Formanek. So even with the damage, Pret's pace has been good, so he'll be relatively frustrated of what could have been if he hadn't had that contact earlier on with the 294 Mercedes, which has just been overtaken by Bure. Great move. Well, it's very brave, that, coming into the chicane. Christophe Bure goes second in AM then, and he's worked hard for that. He's stared at the back of Rokosh for lap after lap after lap. Now we'll see whether Andre Rokosh can actually fight back. He looks like he's on his toes, doesn't it, coming up towards Seine, but then Bure has to move across in front of him, take the line for the corner, so moves to the outside, sweeps across onto the apex. Out of the right, with the clock ticking on down, 4.5 minutes to go. So Andre Rokosh defended as best he could, gets on the lights, trying to distract Christophe Bure into Le Beausset. He's not given up yet. No, the more worrying thing for Rokosh is it looks like his windscreen wiper's frozen, stuck in position. You might not need it too much, but when you turn it off, it obviously sit in a neutral position there. It's sat right in his eye line. And I think that's only happened in the last few laps. You can potentially get it where the driver leaves the windscreen wiper on for too long when there's not enough moisture. So the friction level is too high and it actually burns the motor out and trips it out. So I think he'll be okay because the spray isn't bad, but that would be an annoyance at least for that driver.
So Rokosh coming up now to the end of the lap, but he's just dropped enough time, hasn't he, against Christophe Bure to make a retaliation look a little bit unlikely. The cars hop a little bit, come off the right-hander up towards the timing line. Through they will come again. That now puts 21 laps in the book for them. Now, Oliver Freimuth, who leads the class, is still 21 seconds to the good. That's the car that's third overall, Roberto Pampanini. And he was 10 seconds back, now 7 seconds back from Alberto De Martin, but he's going to run out of time.
Yeah, it's a shame because he's been strong at times, and he's had a bit of a lonely stint in that regard, haven't they? Both of them, and they haven't made any mistakes. That's the main thing. And Pampanini had a relatively weak qualifying for him, didn't he, in Q1? So I think he's been pretty fired up from there. We saw him force a smile in qualifying, but I know he will be aiming a lot higher than what he did. So at least they're finishing the weekend on a relative high.
Points for the championship. So at least that car has scored in both races. Pampanini comes through, having witnessed co-driver Mara Kalamia's dramas off the start. Goes through some of the bits of debris, bits of junked rubber lying on the road, tries to avoid those so he doesn't get the rubber stuck to his tyres, and then he fights the car out of the Virage de la Tour into the last corner, turn 15 then. Hard on the brakes, swings right, careful with the throttle, and nails it now. The car squirts out the other side, and it's going to be one more lap after this because Bronek Formanek has now about a lap time left on the clock, and he's in the middle sector, so we're on the penultimate lap now.
Yeah, and actually just looking at a gap for Formanek of over 40 seconds now, so he'll be really in cruise mode. And yeah, we saw how animated Rosina was in the pits with the officials saying about the rain light. So it's still a roller coaster of emotions, even though pole position led every lap and looking nailed on for a win. There was still that dip in the middle where potentially could have had a mechanical warning flag to come in and address that, but luckily for them, they've got away with it as we cut to another Lamborghini leading its class. This time, Freimuth blasts across the line to do 2 more laps.
Yeah, Oliver Freimuth's had a good day, hasn't he? What with third in the first race and even allowing for a slightly longer pit stop, coming through potentially for a class win here. Helped certainly by Philippe Pret's problems of earlier on, but hopefully this will be the catalyst for more Lamborghini drivers to think, okay, good day out for the teams in GT2. I was going to have a look at that championship.
Another surprising thing is that Anderson is still going in the KTM. And, surprising that it was still drivable after the shunt, and almost surprising race control have allowed that. So I like the freedom on it, and the decision has been right because that car is still circulating. It's still circulating at a good pace. So cosmetic damage it must be, and not as structural as it seems.
Yeah, it's only about 2.5 seconds a lap off what Simon Birch did in the car early on in the race. Okay, it was a bit wetter, but even so, it's not a massive disparity.
Maybe it's a KTM Evo there. He's done all the development for KTM, and they can just homologate that. Who needs a level rear wing? It's obviously over-engineered on that front. 30 seconds remaining, so this will be the start of the last lap for everybody. Formanek's the first man to start that. Bronek
Formanek then way clear in the lead of the race. This was the car that won the opening race earlier on in the day in the dry. Won that by just under 12 seconds, but it's going to be a massive margin here with, in second spot, Alberto De Martin, and then Roberto Pampanini behind. That gap down to 6.3, so Pampanini's just going to run out of time. If this race were an hour and a quarter, he might be on target, but he's going to come up short. But Bronek Formanek, who Lapri aside has barely seen anybody in his stint, is on for the double with Stefan Rosina. Well driven, well run. The only concern briefly was that rain light at the back of the car that wasn't functioning, but they've got away with that and make the run now up towards the chicane for the last time. Track surface still damp, still a little bit of spray hanging in the air, but Formanek and Rosina have really attacked this.
Yeah, they've made light work of it, haven't they, in that regard? And I wonder what Rosina will say on behalf of Formanek. Obviously, we had a good interview earlier from Alex with them after they won race 1. So it's going to be rinse and repeat for this result as well, by the looks of it. Cars streaming through in the background. They are a lap down. That's Charles and Pret in the Maseratis, both the yellow one there. Pret has caught the back of Charles there. He's 2.5 seconds behind, and the last lap he was 8 seconds lap quicker, so maybe Pret will be able to snatch 4th place off Charles. This will be their last lap as well, of course, because the race leader is in front of them.
And coming through, Le Beausset is indeed the race leader. So good drive this by Bronick Formanek, by Stefan Rossina, who set him up nicely. They've not been a partnership together before, but they've certainly adapted to one another very effectively. And Formanek knowing the car from Super Trofeo, Stefan Rossina just a very versatile driver, and good to have him back in the sport after many years away. And let's see whether they are going to carry on and do the whole season. With 2 wins, you kind of think they ought to now. If this was a toe in the water, well, the temperature has suited, hasn't it? Out of turn 15, up to the checkered flag. 2 out of 2 in GT2 European Series, powered by Pirelli.
Checkered flag.
4, Bronick Formanek for Stefan Rossina. 2 wins at Paul Ricard. A great start to the season and a dominant display in race 2 as the Lamborghini Huracan absolutely annihilates the rest of the field. For second place, it should be Alberto De Martin, but we're going to have a long wait before the NM Racing Team Mercedes comes by. There is Philippe Pret's Maserati, and he actually gained a place towards the end. He just got past Patrick Charlet, so he ended up 4th, not 5th in AM, and it was just 11 tenths ahead of him, so he timed it absolutely bang on.
Yeah, he's lost even more bodywork as well, though, on the front of that car. That Lamborghini's had a hard day, so LP in general, the damage sustained in race 1 as well. So, and there is De Martin taking 2nd place. Pampanini was gaining in, you're right, I think if this was a 15-minute longer race, then that could have been a change for 2nd place as we watch Slaymouth coming through turn number 11. 3 more corners to get round to claim the AM class victory.
So Oliver Freimut here up to the line, and 3rd in the first race, a class win here. Bronick Formanek then taking honours with Stefan Rossina from Neil Montserrat and Alberto De Martin. Roberto Pampanini, Mauro Calamia 3rd in Pro-Am. The winning AM then, Oliver Freimut heading for the line ahead of Christophe Bourret, Pascal Gibon, and 3rd, Petr Lisha and André Rokos. A podium after being knocked into a pretty big spin and incurring damage. Not a bad result.
No, really not, and showed such strong pace as well at the start of the race as well, didn't they? Petrolisa doing really, really well, and you can just see the damage KTM there of Anderson getting to the flag, so really well done by that team and by Anderson as well. But yeah, this track has dried out quickly, so well done to all these drivers. Treacherous conditions at the start, transformed all the way through, and now we have the GT4s coming up in some very interesting conditions, to say the least.
Indeed. So Bronick Formanek, then Stefan Rossina, 2 out of 2. Brilliant start to the season for them from Alberto De Martin and Neil Montserrat. So his return to racing has been a successful one. And those drivers also new to GT2, having 2 good results. And Roberto Pampanini and Mauro Calamia, I think, will be frustrated at best with the outcome of the weekend. High hopes for that car after winning in Barcelona at the back end of last season. And again, GT2 not having the biggest grid, but interesting racing. Confirming the results, then it's Bronick Formanek and Stefan Rossina winning from Alberto De Martin and Neil Montserrat, Roberto Pampanini and Mauro Calamia in 3rd. 4th, Thomas Anderson and Simon Birch. Oliver Freimut 5th, he wins AM ahead of Christophe Bourret and Pascal Gibon, and then André Rokos and Petr Lisha for the podium. Philippe Pret with damage with 3 stops, finishes 8th. Patrick Charlet losing out at the end. Jordan Boisson will be a bit frustrated given that he had the car in the lead, but they end up 9th, and we lost Laura Krahem and Mapper Hommel's KTM and the similar car of Thomas Miniberger and Victor Marach. So good day at the office for Bronick Formanek and Stefan Rossina, and of course for the all-conquering team that operates that car, the Michelin Motorsports, powered by Bugera squad. Bugera, you think, normally truck racing, in which they've been European champions as a brand, but now supporting the Michelin Motorsports squad. And there is the Lamborghini making its way down the pit lane. The road now probably track surface better than it's been for the last couple of hours, just when the flag comes out. So the teams reflect on what might have been, Philippe Pret particularly. And I wonder what his thoughts are on that incident, as to whether he says, yeah, I made a mistake, or whether he blames the Mercedes.
Yeah, interesting. sometimes you need, as a driver, to watch it back from the outside, or you're on board. Heat the moment sometimes blurs your own vision and judgment on it. Yeah, format, I love that. You could hear him revving the engine as he came over the start-finish line and there. And big embrace between the two teammates there and the team. Have really got on top of that and done a mega job. So congrats to everyone involved there.
So if you go back to the early days of GT2, we had Porsche and we had Audi and we had even Brabham on one or two occasions. We've had lots of different people dipping in and out, having a look, and the latest to come and have a look and liking what they see, Bronek Formanek and Stefan Rossina. There is the Nil Montserrat NM Racing Team Mercedes that he's been sharing with Alberto de Martin. Out gets Patron, the team owner, Nil Montserrat. He is the NM of NM Racing Team. Immaculate car, that. Some liveries really work on the Mercedes, and that's one of them.
Yeah, that's actually the factory base colour they get delivered. They've just put some nice black stickers on. I quite like that two-tone approach. Just keep it simple with the colours, and it definitely works well. Very pretty car, very sort of angry-looking car as well, though, in some regards, with how wide and aggressive-looking some of the aerodynamic flicks are on it.
So let us hear from our winners, Bronek Formanek and Stefan Rossina. Alex Legui is down there.
Oh, the double act are back. Once again, they have done it. Here at Paul Ricard, the Pro-Am winners, Bronek and Stefan. Bronek, what a race that was.
Preteky byly super, Štefan to krásně rozjel, dovezl mi to a já už jsem to jenom kontroloval až do konce.
I had a great race. It was really good. The Lambo felt fantastic.
No, we felt good. I mean, for us, it was first time on wets. And I think some of the drivers made mistakes, though I believe that the first 10 minutes were quite tough, but then it was, let's say, relatively, I wouldn't say easy, but you need to really be calm and not to make any mistakes, and we have been able to do that. That's why I think we won. Otherwise, you know, we are still missing a pace a bit, but let's see in the next races.
It turned out that this actually became a very useful weekend, presumably, for the testing of the tyres, if you like.
Yeah, we were not sure really. We did test last week with the car, and we didn't know where we are. And here, I have to say, we were not the fastest yesterday. Maserati seems to be a quick car, but unfortunately, our colleagues had a crash today, which we hope they are going to be fine. And we are happy to be first now in the championship, and hopefully we'll have a nice season.
What a great start to the year. Well done, boys.
Thank you.
So 2 out of 2 for Bronek Formanek and his mouthpiece, Stefan Rossina. Doesn't just translate, he even puts the words in Bronek Formanek's mouth, as we heard in the interview at the end of race 1. The Lamborghini then has just been metronomic. The Michelin Motorsport team, a very experienced squad. They have run in Radicals as well as Super Trofeo for Bronek Formanek. So that's a relationship that really does work and being put to good effect here over the course of the 2 races in GT2 European Series powered by Pirelli. So a winning margin of just under 40 seconds. That is quite something. But as Stefan Rossina was making the point, quite a lot of people did have problems or incidents, and some of those, like Philippe Pret, but for the accident, but for the extra pit stops, would have been more of a contender even from the AM class. Now, Oliver Freimuth is the AM winner, 3rd in race 1, winner in race 2.
Oliver Freimuth, congratulations. And then as you just said, not bad for the oldest man on track.
Thank you very much. It was in the rain is always quite good for me. So it's quite strong in the rain, as long as I'm driving. So that was perfectly. Yes.
I have to say that the car looked pretty planted. Looked quite entertaining out there.
Yeah, there was a little bit difficult on the 2 fast turns, turn 7, turn 10. The cars did not really settled there, but every other corner had been quite okay.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it very much. First time on the rain tires from Pirelli. Never driven before. Even no tests, nothing, but it was quite good, yeah. And we put the tire pressure in the right window, I think, so it was good.
Great result, well done.
So a happy Oliver Freimuth, a real enthusiast. Pretty much every season you find him on a grid somewhere, and for, 3 decades, I think he's barely missed a season of racing, but very experienced, great enthusiast, and happy with a class win.
Yeah, it's just nice to see a driver with a big smile on his face. Age no barrier in motorsport, and yeah, look at that. Again, aggressive looking Lamborghini. That's why I like this GT2 category. They've really come into it, these manufacturers, with the right ethos, lots of power, not so much grip, and the car's looking mean and menacing, and that's what we want from motorsport.
So Oliver Freimuth and Bronek Formanek both having raced in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. That has been at Paul Ricard as well this weekend. I wonder whether there are any other teams looking at a GT2 programme now. Let's look at the highlights then of race 2 of the weekend in GT2 European Series powered by Pirelli. A good start made by Stefan Rossina to jump into the lead, although he had Simon Birch trying to go around the outside, but early contact did for Mauro Calamia. He just bounced off Neil Montserrat's Mercedes and went around, dropping to the back of the field. Then a mistake was made by Rossina going deep down at turn 5. He left the door open for Simon Birch, but eventually got the lead back, and Neil Montserrat tried to find a way past as well. He almost got level coming into the chicane. Rossina fended him off and then started to build the gap, but he got away as the race wore on. It meant that Mauro Calamia had to try and fight back before he relayed Roberto Pampanini in number 7 Maserati. And then there was this contact between Petrolicia, who was hit from behind by Philippe Pret. For that, Pret pitted to have the damage assessed, and he got a drive-through, and then he had to serve the regulation stop as well, as did everybody else when the pit window opened. Then we had a big lose for Thomas Anderson, relaying Simon Birch. Around he went, bang, into the barriers. The car carried on and got to 4th overall, and another late race battle eventually went the way of Christophe Bouret, moving up to 2nd in AM at the expense of André Rocoche. But for Bronek Formanek, no stopping his Lamborghini. He took over from Stefan Rossina and blitzed the opposition. 2 races, 2 wins for Bronek Formanek and Stefan Rossina here at Paul Ricard. So the winning cars in the Parc Fermé area. Others heading back to the paddock. And a good start to the season for GT2 European Series. Some good, interesting racing. GT4 teams scurry into the pit lane. They will get set for their second race of the day. And there the drivers now being brought forward with the Pro-Am class, first of all, where Roberto Pampanini and behind him Mauro Calamia head to the 3rd step of the Pro-Am podium. There for 2nd place, Neil Montserrat and Alberto De Martin. After a 3rd in the early race, 2nd in race 2. So the next round, top step beckons for them, doesn't it? And here are the double winners then. Michenik Motorsport being represented on the podium. Stefan Rossina and Bronek Formanek. Race winners for the 2nd time today. 2 very happy drivers. Bronek Formanek, who was a front runner in his class in Super Trofeo, now an overall winner and very keen to get on with the champagne. So for Bronek Formanek, for Stefan Rossina, the champagne awaits. First of all, though, there is a rather cold-looking Matteo Braga from Pirelli to hand over the trophies to the 3rd place drivers of Roberto Pampanini and Mauro Calamia. Then for Neil Montserrat and Alberto De Martin, the 2nd placed trophies await, as Neil Montserrat and Alberto De Martin are congratulated, 3rd in the opener, 2nd in this, and Roberto Pampanini getting ready with his champagne. Yesterday, we found that almost on every podium there was one bottle that wouldn't open. We wait to see whether anybody has the same sort of April Fool type trick here. So they're the trophies to our winners. And the champagne awaits. 5 for Formanek, 5 for Rossina, and Mauro Calamia, I think, is the one that gets the dodgy cork this time. Oh no, he's done it. Well done. So it all works out beautifully this time, but for the Michenik Motorsport team, 2 out of 2. A dominant display in the opening rounds of GT2 European Series, powered by Pirelli. So what does that do to the championship? Well, not surprisingly, Stefan Rossina and Bronek Formanek jump clear in Pro-Am from Neil Montserrat and Alberto De Martin. Simon Birch, Thomas Anderson getting the car home, important for points. They're ahead of Mauro Calamia and Roberto Pampanini. Matteo Homola and Laura Kreimer having had a very tough weekend. And Eddie Cheever and Anik Patel getting a point for pole position for this race. They couldn't start, but at least they have something to show for the weekend's work. So, drivers for our AM podium will step forward in a moment or two. There they are. And it is Petrolicia and André Rocoche. First of all, André Rocoche, thumbs up. Enjoyed his battle at the end of the race with Christophe Bourret. Petrolicia enjoyed his battle until the contact came with Philippe Pret. For second place, it will be Pascal Gibon and Christophe Bourret. So a second, if you see what I mean, for the weekend. And then for the AM victory, this time it is Oliver Freimuth who makes his way onto the podium. And a very good effort it is by Oliver Freimuth. He's enjoyed himself, despite the conditions, perhaps because of the conditions, and coming through victorious. Matteo Braga will step forward with the trophies. If you're wondering why Alberto De Martin and Neil Montserrat are back on the podium, it's because they are the Iron Cup winners. The Iron Cup for the highest placed crew with a combined age of 90 years of age. And Neil Montserrat and Alberto De Martin get the trophies there for third place. Studying them very inquisitively, Petrolicia and André Rocoche there. Pascal Gibon and Christophe Bourret receive their second placed trophies. And Oliver Freimuth says, what about me? Well, his trophy is on its way. The next rounds of GT2 will be in Holland. We go to Zandvoort on the 16th to the 18th of May, and we'll see you there for more drama in the GT2 European Series.